Welcome to the Deep Dive. If you're listening to this show, chances are you are the skeptical learner.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the current global information environment, especially, anything concerning Russia and Ukraine, and you recognize it's just a minefield.
It is.
You might be deeply skeptical of the mainstream Western narratives. Maybe you question that consistent message you hear from your government or from legacy media.
Maybe you feel like you're just not getting the whole picture.
Exactly. You feel like you are actively not getting the full story. And that deep, productive skepticism is precisely what foreign influence operations are now designed to exploit.
That's the critical starting point, isn't it? When a population's trust in its own institutions, whether that's media, government, even academic institutions, when that begins to erode, it creates this very specific vacuum.
A space opens up.
A space opens up, and people actively seek out alternative voices. Voices that appear independent, authentic, and most importantly, unfiltered.
They want someone who sounds like them, someone who's fighting the system.
Exactly. And that vulnerability is the precise target of the soft power operation we're going to be dissecting today.
Absolutely. Our focus is on an English language media project that has recently emerged. It's called Russia Up Close.
Right.
And it's designed to fill a very specific gap for Western audiences, especially after all those major state-affiliated media channels were banned. We've taken a stack of investigative reports, transcripts, source analysis, and we're going to dive deep into the mechanics of this show.
Our mission here isn't just to, summarize what they say. We're going to analyze the pilot episode of Russia Up Close, its framing, its hosts, its guests, as a modern, highly refined, soft-powered psychological operation, a psyop.
Yeah.
This is really a textbook case of how information warfare has evolved since state media like RT and Sputnik were blocked globally.
The goal here is actionable knowledge. We're going to synthesize the facts laid out in multiple detailed investigations to give you, the skeptical listener, a clear, tangible understanding of the specific tactics being used.
We want you to be able to identify exactly how these influence peddlers try to subtly shift your perspective.
Right. Moving viewers away from acknowledging the reality of the ongoing, full-scale, unprovoked aggression against Ukraine. We are here to uncover the entire playbook, technique by technique. So you should probably start with the strategic context.
Okay.
In 2022, right after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began, Western platforms, we're talking the EU, major social media companies, YouTube, they all implemented these really extensive bans on Russian state media.
Primarily RT and Sputnik.
Primarily RT and Sputnik. And just, overnight, that eliminated a massive source of English language, state-directed messaging that was aimed right at the West.
So they couldn't just use the old branding. The challenge wasn't just finding a new place to post content. The challenge was structurally reinventing the entire delivery system.
That's it. They needed new platforms that appeared independent, civilian, and this is the key part, specifically non-state aligned.
That was necessary to slip past both, human moderation and the automated filters. Both. And it allowed their narratives to reach the target audience directly without that big red state-sponsored media label.
And Russia Up Close is the next generation solution to that problem.
It's very sophisticated. I mean, if you just compare the appearance of the show to its actual goal, the contrast is pretty stark.
So on the surface, what do you see?
On the surface, the show is meticulously designed to look personal, friendly, almost like a family vlog. The hosts, Joseph Schutzman and Eddie Gonzalez, they frame the whole discussion around concepts that are designed to resonate with a disillusioned Western listener.
Things like honest conversation.
Honest conversation, moving past the headlines and politics, finding common ground, all of that stuff.
Let's look at the hosts' personas, because those seem very carefully constructed.
They are.
Joseph Schutzman, for instance. He immediately introduces himself not just as a host, but as an IT expert, a husband, and a father who moved his family to Russia to build a new life.
And his framing is key, grounded in faith, tradition, and purpose.
Right. He's relatable, he's Western-born, and he's explicitly on a quest for the spiritual stability that he implies the West now lacks.
And then you've got Eddie Gonzalez. He positions himself as a traveler, a storyteller, but crucially, he emphasizes his 30 years as a Texas lawman.
Which, for a conservative or ex-military audience, that grants him immediate perceived authority.
Absolutely. He says his experience lets him see through the noise and cut past the political rhetoric to find where East and West actually meet.
So their stated mission together is what?
Their joint mission is to pierce the information wall and fight in the information war against the media, so they're framing themselves as anti-establishment allies to you, the viewer.
But when you strip away that friendly, anti-establishment veneer, you actually analyze the talking points they're delivering.
The messaging falls directly in line with classic, predictable Kremlin narratives. It's all there. The West is morally and socially collapsing. Russia is stable, spiritual, guided by common sense. Sanctions are backfiring. They're hurting the West more than Russia. And critically, traditional families and Christian values are safer in Russia than they are in the US or the EU.
Okay, so this brings us to the core strategic mission you mentioned, the concept called moral shock absorption.
Yes. We need to spend a minute here because this is the key mechanism of this kind of soft psyop. This is the tactic of deliberately replacing the visibility of war, repression, and political violence.
The images that generate moral shock.
Exactly, replacing those with curated, emotionally soothing images.
So instead of seeing trenches, missile damage, political repression, you're just flooded with lifestyle stories.
Lifestyle stories, emotional testimonies, videos of beautiful churches, and bizarrely constant commentary on how clean the streets are in Russian cities.
And psychologically, how does that work on a skeptical viewer?
It works by creating cognitive dissonance. If you, the listener, are constantly shown images of happy, clean families enjoying tradition and stability, it becomes incredibly difficult to maintain the mental image of that nation as a singular, brutal aggressor.
The brain wants things to make sense.
The human brain naturally seeks coherence. If I see clean streets and happy children, my moral outrage, it starts to soften. The operation is designed to distract Western viewers not by arguing about the front line, but by pushing the war completely out of the frame.
It's a deliberate misdirection.
Yeah.
They're basically betting that if they can capture your attention with a relatable Western face talking about the failure of U.S. universities or the importance of faith,
You won't ask about the full-scale invasion.
right, they immediately set up this U.S. versus them dynamic. They say they're bringing Western audiences into Russia's backyard to see how both Russians and foreigners live, think, and believe.
And by portraying themselves as fellow anti-establishment warriors who also distrust the media, they establish instant, deep credibility with that skeptical Western audience we identified right at the start.
They're essentially telling the viewer, we are the real rebels. We're the ones willing to face censorship to tell you the truth about stability and tradition.
And that just prepares the audience. It prepares them to receive all the subsequent, more politically charged narratives without the usual filters you apply to state media.
Okay, so let's move beyond the framing and into the technical details. The investigations identify 6 specific PSYOP tools that were used in the pilot episode of Russia Up Close.
Right, and these aren't random choices. They form a calculated operational playbook, one that's been honed over years of state media influence work.
So we'll break these down one by one, using specific quotes and examples from the show's guests.
Yeah, the guests were Sasha Joe, who is a Russian-American creator running the Sasha Meets Russia channels, a German immigrant and business founder named Jacob Pinneker, and the State Duma deputy Maria Butina.
Okay, let's start with the first 2 techniques, the warm proxy and the deplatformed martyr.
The first one is absolutely essential for any kind of cross-cultural influence, the warm proxy.
What does that mean exactly?
When you're delivering sensitive political messaging to a foreign audience, that audience is going to inherently distrust an official government spokesperson. It's just human nature. So the messaging has to come from Western-born or Western-speaking individuals.
You make it feel familiar.
Familiar, trustworthy, and organic.
And Sasha Joe is the archetype here. She's Russian-American. She grew up in the West. She speaks fluent English with no detectable accent. She's the ideal bridge.
The perfect bridge. She can connect instantly with Western viewers while advocating for Russian policies and narratives.
And they use her personal story to establish this proxy status.
They do. She talks about being in high school somewhere between 2014 and 2016 and how she had to argue with classmates who believed Siberia was just a frozen wasteland.
And she would show them pictures to challenge that.
Exactly. And that little anecdote is key. It establishes her as this relatable figure who has always been fighting simplistic Western stereotypes. So it pre-validates her current, much more political claims.
But they don't just rely on familiarity. They immediately set the hook with the second tactic, the deplatformed martyr narrative.
Yes. Her censorship isn't hidden. It's aggressively promoted as proof. Proof that she tells dangerous truths the West doesn't want you to hear.
And her claims about the censorship are pretty extensive.
They're huge. She says she lost her YouTube channel, which had 100,000 subscribers. Not once, but twice.
Wow.
She lost her Instagram, which was almost at 300,000 subscribers, and her TikTok with 200,000 followers. And she emphasizes they were all shut down at the same time in March of this year, often without warning or any clear explanation.
That sheer volume of loss is intended to shock the audience. I mean, for this skeptical Westerner who already believes that social media platforms and big tech wield too much power and silence dissenting voices.
This narrative is immediate emotional validation. It confirms all of the listeners' anti-establishment suspicions.
And then that narrative is immediately weaponized politically.
Immediately, Sasha Joe explicitly states, "I was not political until they made me political by censoring her."
So that tells the skeptical listener, I was just sharing harmless culture, but they attacked me, forcing me to take a side.
And the message becomes crystal clear. If she's being silenced by the very institutions you already distrust, she must be speaking the truth. It transforms her into a martyr for free speech in the eyes of that target audience, regardless of the highly political pro-Kremlin content she now shares.
The focus shifts entirely away from the content and onto the censorship.
Precisely.
Okay, next up we have the inversion and refuge narratives.
Right, so the inversion narrative is a complete rhetorical reversal of reality. The U.S. and the West are characterized as chaotic, censorious, and morally lost.
While Russia is framed as the real protector of democracy, women, and traditional families.
Sasha Joe uses her personal experience to launch into a major political and cultural inversion, specifically around gender roles. She argues that Russia is actually more feminist than the U.S.
How does she justify that?
She says it's because Russian women are valued both as mothers and as career professionals. She highlights Russia's very robust paid maternity leave policies and emphasizes that women are allowed and encouraged to remain traditionally feminine.
And she contrasts that image of stable, valued femininity with her experience in the U.S.,
which she describes as an unhealthy and toxic society. And the specific anecdote she uses to back this up is powerful and highly targeted.
The 2016 election.
The 2016 U.S. election. She cites her university experience where classes were canceled and students held a literal day of mourning because Donald Trump was elected.
That anecdote serves a really crucial purpose, doesn't it? For the skeptical conservative Western audience, the image of college students mourning an election victory is a visceral shorthand for political hysteria and moral collapse.
It is. She argues that this environment demanded conformity and denied parts of her identity, like even speaking Russian. So the mechanism is this. The small, relatable cultural complaint, toxic university culture, is used to validate the massive, politically motivated claim that the U.S. is morally bankrupt and Russia offers a superior moral and social structure.
And Maria Butina executes a different but equally powerful political inversion narrative.
She does. When she's discussing the Russian political system, she's very quick to point out its structural similarities to the West. You know, 3 branches, 2 chambers, a system she claims was prototyped by the U.S. Constitution.
But then she pivots.
She emphasizes what she frames as the crucial functional difference. The ban on corporate lobbying in Russia.
And the implication there is?
The implication is that unlike the U.S. system, where Congress is constantly bought by huge companies and corporations, Russia is the functional, ethical democracy because its political process isn't tainted by corporate interests.
That is a stunning piece of rhetoric. It's directly aimed at an American audience that is deeply disillusioned with campaign finance and political corruption.
It completely inverts the narrative. It positions Russia, which many in the West view as an authoritarian state, as the true guardian of political purity.
So if the U.S. political system is truly corrupted, as these guests suggest, then the next logical step for a disillusioned person is to seek safety, to seek refuge somewhere else.
And that brings us to the refuge narrative. The show, repeatedly, and not subtly, implies that Western families must actively escape their own countries to protect their children, their faith, and their values.
And Sasha Joe's personal story becomes the template for this narrative. She left her university in Boston, which she called too expensive and toxic. But crucially, she mentions that after she and her parents moved to Russia,
4 other families from their Orthodox church followed them.
That detail is vital. It frames her move not as some isolated radical decision, but as a necessary exodus for the sake of faith and family. A community response to an intolerable threat.
And Jacob Pinneker, the German immigrant, he reinforces this from his base in Nizhny Novgorod, which he specifically calls a city for families.
And he moved after the 2022 full-scale war began.
Yes, and he made a conscious choice to stay when, as he says, 99% of his expat friends packed up, and left.
He talks a lot about traditional values and clean streets.
Traditional values, clean streets, and promoting a healthy work-life balance. His focus is entirely on the future of his children. He states it emphatically. Nizhny Novgorod is the place to be because Russia is the future.
And that message is deeply resonant with that target demographic.
Yeah.
If you're a Western conservative, if you prioritize traditional faith and family, the message is your country's failing you, and Russia is the only safe harbor left for your kids.
It's an explicit call to moral and geographic flight.
Okay, so this appeal to tradition and stability, it leads to the next set of techniques: moral shock absorption and value laundering.
Yes. And this culminates in what is probably the most effective soft power technique of all: moral shock absorption. The brutal realities, the war, political repression, censorship, they're systematically removed from the viewer's attention.
And they're replaced entirely with this curated, emotionally reassuring content.
Family life, sunsets, churches, clean streets, all of it.
The genius of this operation is its mundanity.
Yeah.
They don't try to deny that a conflict exists.
No, they just make sure you never see it. They substitute it with comfort. The
Yeah.
goal is to soften your emotional response until the ongoing full-scale, unprovoked aggression in Ukraine becomes this abstract, distant political problem rather than a moral outrage that demands your attention.
Jacob Pinneker's Okok agency is a perfect illustration of this.
It is. His agency doesn't just help immigrants with the bureaucratic side of moving. It actively curates their cultural integration.
They offer courses for kids.
Right. Courses that emphasize Russian language and culture through traditional, non-political means like trips to monasteries. It immediately links education, faith, and tradition all together.
So the focus is entirely on building community, reinforcing shared values, and ensuring stability for the family.
And it completely sidesteps the ethical and political reason why these Westerners are fleeing what they see as moral collapse at a time when Russia is engaged in unprovoked aggression against a neighbor. The moral weight of the situation is just replaced by the comforting, familiar weight of tradition and religion.
And this soft power approach is underpinned by the constant repetition of specific words, a tactic called value laundering.
It's all about repetition. The constant, nonstop use of terms like family, faith, children, tradition, stability. They repeat these words to morally sanitize the regime and conceal the reality of political repression and war.
Maria Butina expertly delivers the political justification for this value laundering.
She does. She stresses that all 5 major Russian political parties, even the Liberal Democratic Party, are united in their pro-conservative values.
She says that in Russia, family is a sacred thing.
Family is a sacred thing. We all believe in God, and the LGBT movement is specifically banned as extremist.
And that creates an immediate, visceral, ideological alignment with Western conservatives who feel increasingly marginalized by progressive social and political trends back home.
It makes Russia, the political entity, seem like a moral, unified defender of traditional civilization.
Butina also leans heavily into her own past, her victimhood, to further sanitize her current political role.
Oh, heavily. She details her imprisonment in the U.S., which she claims involved torture, solitary confinement, a forced guilty plea, and she contrasts that with her current work running a nonprofit called Welcome to Russia.
And this organization, she notes, supports people relocating based on these same traditional values.
She argues Westerners come because they want to save their kids and their families. So by focusing on her personal victimhood and her current spiritual humanitarian mission, her state media ties, her role as a state Duma deputy, the whole political context, it's all obscured by this cloud of good intentions and traditional laundered values.
The cynical use of her personal suffering to recruit people into a state-aligned movement is a powerful example of that technique.
It is.
We've dissected the message and the tactics. Now, for the skeptical listener, we have to look at the foundation, the structure, and the funding.
This is where the entire claim of independence by Russia up close and its connected guests just completely collapses.
We're moving from the psychological operation to the financial operation.
We're talking about content laundering, and this involves a much larger coordinated ecosystem of English language psyops, all linked directly to RT funding. Let's start with the Real Reporter case, featuring Konstantin Rojkov. He's a key example uncovered in the investigation Unmasking Real Reporter.
Okay, so tell us about Rojkov.
Rojkov managed to build a massive YouTube platform, 330,000 subscribers under the Real Reporter brand. And crucially, he positioned himself as a struggling, independent entrepreneur.
Actively asking for donations.
Actively asking his Western viewers for donations on platforms like Buy Me a Coffee. He admitted working for RT years ago, but he vehemently insisted he had quit and built this new channel all by himself since March 2022.
And for the listener who distrusts institutions, that persona is incredibly compelling. The independent journalist fighting the good fight, surviving only on audience donations.
It's a perfect story. But the evidence of deception here is profound.
So what did the investigators find?
First, the timing and the location of the channel's registration are critical. The Real Reporter channel was registered in March 2022.
Exactly 1 month after the full-scale invasion started and RT was blocked.
Precisely. And it was registered not in Russia, but in Kazakhstan. That immediately signals a structural attempt to evade sanctions and scrutiny, creating the illusion of a foreign independent entity.
And then there's the smoking gun of content recycling.
This is the big one. The investigative report found that some videos published on the Real Reporter channel were identical stories, sometimes down to the scripting, that were previously produced and aired by Rajkov when he was working directly for RT.
So this wasn't just similar messaging. This was direct industrial-scale content laundering.
It was repackaging old state media output as fresh, independent journalism.
And what happened when investigators asked him about this?
His response was not an explanation. It was immediate deletion of the videos, which just confirms the effort to hide that direct, traceable link back to state media.
But the financial proof is the most damning part, isn't it? It reveals the full extent of the cynicism.
It does. Tax data obtained by the investigators showed Rajkov continued receiving money from the legal entity for RT until at least the end of 2024.
Let's clarify that for the listener. The tax data showed payments coming from Ano TV Novosti.
Yes. And for anyone unfamiliar with the Russian media structure, think of Ano TV Novosti as the corporate billing name. It's the entity that writes the checks for the state broadcaster RT.
So that confirms the direct financial link. Beyond the shadow of a doubt, it bypasses his whole "I quit years ago" claim.
Completely.
How massive were these payments? Because the narrative he pushed was that of a struggling, independent blogger.
In 2023 alone, Rajkov received over 8 million rubles. To put that into perspective, that is roughly 700,000 rubles a month. This is not a struggling blogger's salary. This is the salary of a corporate executive or a high-level state media correspondent.
So while he was claiming to be a martyr, surviving on spare change from his Western audience through "Buy Me a Coffee,"
He was simultaneously receiving a massive, stable, state-funded salary.
that just exposes the extreme profitability and cynicism of this specific type of deception. The operation is designed to weaponize the image of a targeted martyr for financial gain, funded directly by the state broadcaster he claimed to have left.
And when he was confronted with this undeniable tax data, he employed the tactic of shifting the burden of proof. He demands that his critics provide specifics, facts, evidence of current ties.
Knowing that the specific tax and registration data is really difficult for a casual viewer to access.
Exactly. By creating this illusion of required onerous proof, he forces the accuser to do all the work while he maintains the veneer of persecuted innocence for his audience.
And Roskov's case is not an anomaly. The sources say this is a systematic pattern.
It's part of an entire ecosystem. The sources detail how the banned channel Russian Code, which heavily promoted that Westerners moving for traditional values angle, simply reappeared as Russian Road.
Same concept, new name, identical playbook.
And the investigation meticulously traced the authors of Russian Road back to 2 confirmed longtime RT employees. Artem Vorbey, a documentary filmmaker for the State Channel,
And Pavel Bakov.
a director who has worked for RT for 18 years. These are not independent voices experimenting on YouTube. They are experienced RT operatives simply rebranding their state-funded work as civilian independent content to avoid sanctions.
And let's loop back to the warm proxy we discussed earlier, Sasha Joe.
Right. While she presents herself as this passionate Russian-American content creator, the investigation confirmed she is officially employed by RT since March 2023.
And receiving a salary.
A salary of 160,000 rubles per month. And she, just like Rajkov, immediately launched a new channel when her first one was blocked, fitting perfectly into this coordinated ecosystem designed to mimic independence.
What's fascinating is how interwoven this ecosystem is.
It is. Many of the ordinary expats featured on these supposedly independent channels, like Russian Road, also appear on actual, overt RT programs, telling identical stories with predictable talking points.
So the content is being centrally manufactured and then disseminated across this decentralized network of independent channels.
To maximize reach and minimize scrutiny.
This network is then given political weight through the Welcome to Russia project, co-founded by State Duma Deputy Maria Butina.
And this project is not just a YouTube channel. It's a formalized, state-involved effort aimed at attracting foreigners, who they call spiritual immigrants, who support traditional Russian spiritual and moral values.
And the Russian government has reinforced this with actual policy.
Yes, there's a simplified visa process for these spiritual immigrants, formalized under Decree 702, which President Putin signed in August 2024. This shows the project is directly integrated into state policy goals, using the appeal of traditional values to recruit politically aligned Westerners.
But let's follow the money again. There's a key figure here in the financial structure, Martin Helt, an Austrian entrepreneur.
Yes, a co-founder of the Welcome to Russia project. Helt runs a company called Fancy Nerds. And what does Fancy Nerds do?
Conveniently, it's a VPN service.
A VPN service specifically marketed to help people access blocked content like RT.
And the money trail exposed here is stunning.
It really is. Fancy Nerds, Helt's Austrian company promoting Russian immigration, received 45 million rubles from RT between 2023 and 2024. And this is the crucial detail.
What's that?
RT was Fancy Nerds' only source of income.
So Held is essentially a highly profitable contractor for the state media organization that's banned in the West, all while he's advocating for his spiritual return to Russia.
The cynicism is profound. Helt is paid 45 million rubles by RT to run a VPN service designed to let people view RT, while he simultaneously leverages that platform to recruit Westerners to Russia on moral and spiritual grounds.
And this is where the narrative completely fractures.
The cynicism becomes breathtaking. Martin Helt promotes Russia as the future. He states publicly that his daughters will grow up there, safe from Western moral decay.
But the investigation found something different.
The investigation found that Helt and his family bought a house near Vienna for €500,000 in 2024. His children attend Austrian schools, and his last official registration was at that €500,000 address near Vienna.
That is the ultimate do as I say, not as I do moment.
It is. He is taking a massive RT-funded check, paid for by the Russian state, to tell skeptical Western families to sacrifice their comfort and financial stability and move east,
while ensuring his own children remain safe and educated in an affluent Western European suburb.
This profound hypocritical gap between the narrative he pushes and his personal reality exposes the entire operation not as a spiritual movement, but as a purely financial and strategic weapon. They are selling a dream they themselves refuse to buy into.
Furthermore, the German blogger Alina Lipp, who's involved in Welcome to Russia and is facing criminal charges in Germany.
She was also found to have received payments from Helt's RT-funded Fancy Nerds, marked as salary. And when she was questioned, she admitted using Fancy Nerds because it was hard to receive euro donations, but she was very reluctant for her direct link to the RT-funded company to be publicized.
So the entire web just demonstrates a structured, state-funded operation. Money flows from the banned RT through third-party independent services like Fancy Nerds to pay bloggers and fund influence operations like Welcome to Russia.
The claim of independence is a lucrative fiction.
Okay, let's shift our analysis to the specific messaging transfer from the old RT playbook, specifically analyzing the closing segment of the pilot episode, I'll Tell You What, hosted by Eddie Gonzalez.
Right. The structure of the show itself, mimicking the predictable RT format, is designed to normalize the conflict and disarm Western audiences emotionally.
The Russia Up Close pilot uses pre-edited interviews, predictable talking points,
anti-West narratives wrapped in emotional stories, and then a final news segment that repeats standard Kremlin messaging. This structure is intended to make the delivery feel familiar and authoritative, but it's entirely manufactured.
And the crucial point of the economic segment, I'll tell you what, is that by portraying sanctions as useless and Russia as thriving, it accomplishes two things.
It normalizes a long war, and it emotionally disarms Western audiences. If the sanctions hurt you, the European or American consumer, more than they hurt Russia, why would you keep supporting them? And by extension, why keep supporting Ukraine?
Eddie Gonzalez focuses heavily on framing the sanctions as an utter failure.
He does. He frames the EU's 19th sanctions package not as a serious policy effort, but as a political joke. He says, 18 packages didn't work, why would 19 succeed?
And he dismisses the whole effort as loud, aggressive, and completely ineffective.
That rhetorical move instantly belittles and delegitimizes Western policy efforts.
He then pivots immediately to the inversion of effect, claiming that the sanctions hurt Europe significantly more than they hurt Russia.
And he cites specific high-visibility pain points that resonate with average Western listeners. The shuttering of German factories, massive French farmer protests, rising energy prices across the EU.
And in stark contrast, he claims Russia is not just surviving, but actively thriving.
He points to rising GDP, a stabilizing ruble, industrial production climbing back up, and, crucially, expanding trade through emerging market blocs. He emphasizes Russia's trade expansion via the BRICS countries.
Just for context, BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. That's the core of this emerging market bloc.
And by stressing expansion with BRICS, specifically mentioning China and Indy Gonzalez, is arguing that Russia has successfully bypassed Western economic isolation and is pivoting toward a more powerful future global market.
He even argues that Russia is supporting victims of U.S. sanctions like Iran and Venezuela.
Right, thereby positioning Russia not as an isolated pariah, but as the benevolent leader of a new resilient economic coalition that's defying Western dominance.
The narrative then shifts to detailing Western hypocrisy. Gonzalez claims that Western companies, which publicly left Russia in a grand show of moral solidarity, are sneaking back into Russia through third parties.
He cites the example of luxury brands simply changing their labels or shipping through intermediaries to continue accessing the highly profitable Russian market.
That is a devastating rhetorical blow, aimed right at the skeptical Western audience. It tells them the moral case for sanctions, that your companies and governments are acting ethically, is a lie. Even the companies you trust are secretly prioritizing profit over principle.
He also points out the staggering energy trade hypocrisy. He claims that Europe is buying back the same banned Russian gas, only it's been repackaged and laundered through India, China, or Turkey.
The sophistication of this argument lies in its strategic goal. It's not just about economics.
No, it's about eroding the moral conviction required to sustain the conflict. If the system is rigged, if the sanctions are useless, and if Western corporations are complicit, then why should the average listener care about continuing to support the conflict?
The conclusion Gonzalez draws is designed to stick with that target audience. He argues that the repeated failure of the sanctions proves the EU strategy is collapsing and lacks authority.
He says, authority isn't claimed by decree, it's earned by results, implying that Russia's successful endurance has earned it authority, while the West's failure proves its lack of strategic leadership. This economic messaging works by converting political defeatism into moral neutrality.
Okay, we've spent a significant amount of time unpacking the sources. Let's bring this analysis to a head.
What we've laid out today, using undeniable transcripts and detailed financial investigation evidence, confirms that Russia Up Close is not simple, blunt, or easily dismissed propaganda.
It is a meticulously crafted, highly professional, soft psychological operation.
And it targets a very specific and crucial audience, the skeptical Westerner. We're talking conservatives, families prioritizing tradition, ex-military personnel, religious communities, and anyone deeply disillusioned with established institutions and mainstream media narratives.
Its purpose is complex. It is not designed to argue facts about the front lines of the full-scale war.
No. Its singular purpose is to fundamentally shift what feels morally and politically normal. It attempts to systematically replace the mental image of a nation engaged in unprovoked aggression with the image of a stable, misunderstood guardian of tradition, faith, and family values.
And if they succeed in convincing Western audiences, or even just that skeptical segment of the audience, that Russia is a desirable, stable, moral alternative, and if they stop viewing the full-scale, unprovoked aggression against Ukraine as a moral outrage,
then the operation is successful. The moral opposition to the conflict is neutralized, and the sanctions lose their public mandate.
And the financial cynicism uncovered here is the definitive evidence of state coordination.
We laid out undeniable evidence of structural and financial ties. Konstantin Rojkov receiving millions from RT while running a deceptive independent donation campaign.
Sasha Joe confirmed to be on an RT salary.
The Russian road channel run by confirmed RT employees, and most strikingly, Martin Helt's Austrian company, Fancy Nerds, receiving 45 million rubles from RT, all while he promotes spiritual immigration from the comfort and safety of his €500,000 home near Vienna.
These are not independent creators. They are a coordinated, state-funded network, carefully laundering their content and their personas to bypass Western defenses and speak directly to your skepticism.
They are weaponizing your distrust of Western institutions for the political gain of a foreign power.
The critical question, especially for you, the skeptical learner who values truth and transparency, is this.
If these operations are designed to erode trust in all Western institutions, how do you defend against a foreign information weapon that explicitly asks you to donate money, your private funds, your hard-earned dollars, to the very people being paid millions by a state entity?
The profound irony and the scale of this financial deception reveal the core cynicism at the heart of this entire soft power playbook. What stands out to you from the tactics we uncovered today? And how will you apply this knowledge the next time an independent voice asks for your faith and your financial support?